everybody, Robinson DUP. So John, are you ready to tell people the perfect way to train and gain muscle?
I guess so. That's a pretty big...
Are you ready?
All right.
Because we know there's only one way to get big and get strong, right?
I have the answer. Are you ready?
Actually, this is a trick question because John and I get asked this all the time. Give me the way that only, it only works one way, right? So it's high reps, low weight, or it's low, high weight, low reps.
See, I was going to say Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tart, yeah, well, that's my secret. But John and I were actually off camera. We were talking, just starting to talk about my new training plan that's coming up and how my body or things that I've noticed in my off season. So, for instance, I was talking about, you guys saw me doing a lot of like maxing about every 5 weeks with daily undulated periodization. What I was telling John is over a cumulative, 10 months that I was doing that, I was starting to notice a lot of things where I was having a lot of inflammation and flare-ups and also fatigue that I just was not recovering from doing that. Now, you say, Robinson, stop being such a wuss and lift some heavy-ass weight.
I was just about to say it.
Which is true, right. Shut up and lift weight. I tell you that all the time. But at the same time, what I'm noticing is when I do these heavy lifts, I have the ability to generate the horsepower. We've seen that. I've done a 455 squat, I've done a 535 dead, and I've put up a 395 bench raw. So I have the ability to hit those kind of numbers, and if I were to do powerlifting, I'd probably have to get, for my weight class, I'd have to get further up, especially in the squat and the dead, but nonetheless, I have the ability to put up a lot of weight, okay? And there are people out there who are smaller than me, they're stronger than me, I'm fine with that, but I have the ability to put up substantial numbers. So I was telling John, hey listen, maybe with the way we're going, especially now that I'm in a cut, especially now I'm getting a caloric deficit, maybe we should avoid some of this maxing and some of these very, very high weights, because I feel like for 2 weeks after, I'm still not normal. So I did that 535 dead, and now 405, which I can pull for reps, I can barely get off the ground, which I think what ended up happening with me straining my lower back resulted from that 535 dead, and then some weaknesses that kind of varied from there. So while I was talking to John about this, he started to talk about different training styles, and everybody has like what works for them. So John, you want to kind of start talking about the different methods?
Sure, absolutely.
Right. So here we go. See, so not everything works for one person.
Okay, so science. What is the science?
Nerds.
The science says that hypertrophy has a lot to do with workload. Your sets times your reps times your weight, how frequently you do that, how frequently you stimulate muscle protein synthesis, mechanical tension, how much tension you put on the actual muscle itself, and progressive overload, how much weight you're adding to the movement over time. And how much metabolic stress you're accumulating in the muscle during the actual training session. In fact, there was a research study that Brad Schoenfeld just completed looking at powerlifters and bodybuilders, looking at their different training styles. And what he did was he had a training program that had a lot more sets and reps with a lighter weight, and he matched that with a powerlifting condition where the same athletes, or I should say different athletes, had a powerlifting program where they were lifting heavier weight for less repetitions. And what he did was he matched the workload of the two and found that both had the same results in terms of hypertrophy. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you can achieve the same results in terms of hypertrophy through either type of approach. And so a lot of people jump to conclusions thinking about that, thinking that, oh, well then maybe I should just powerlift, right? Everybody should just do powerlifting. Everybody should lift heavy weight and then they'll grow muscle. That's not always the best approach. For someone like Greg, for example, who he has historically had injuries and also has trained as an athlete, and the type of athletics he's been involved in, he was doing lots of volume-based training. So he is conditioned and used to lots of sets, lots of reps, lighter weight, and practice. You'll notice that athletes practice, tons of practice.
You're talking about practice?
And that's what he's used to. He's not used to a strength sport lifting lots of heavy weight frequently. Whereas you can take like another athlete of mine, I'm going to give a shout out to Justin Gardner, who...
Mighty Mouse.
He is Mighty Mouse. Who is phenomenally strong and volume, he hates volume. He hates, you know, lifting lots of, you know, a lighter weight for lots of repetitions. He loves lifting heavy weight. He, in fact, at a period of time, I had him doing daily maxing, and he loved it. And it was actually that training block in particular is where he gained the most amount of strength, and he asks for it frequently. So the point of what I'm trying to get to is that, you know, there are scientific studies that have looked at people and how they acclimate to training and how they adapt to different styles of training. And some people adapt to heavier weights, lower repetitions, and lower, and you know, maybe more sets of that. And some people really do well with lighter weights and lighter repetitions or more repetitions. So really, it comes down to you and knowing yourself and how you respond. But really, my take on it is, why don't you do all of it? Work it all in. And so when it comes to Greg, that's what we're going to do. We're going to still have him lift heavy weights, but we're going to push more toward the end of hypertrophy, more toward the end of more sets, more repetitions, lighter weight for him, because that's what he progresses better with. I guess a good example of this, and this is something I was mentioning off camera before, is that Arnold was a big volume guy. He would do lighter weights for tons of repetitions and many sets. I mean, if you ever have the encyclopedia of you know, bodybuilding, his book, he talks about a tricep workout that he did where he did 90 sets of tricep, and I'm like, that would kill me. I could never do it. You would love it. I would kill me. Anyway, the point is that's how he trained, and we know for most people they're going to benefit from a more volume-based program. Whereas you look at Mike Metzer, who at the high-intensity training program, he would take one set to failure for every body part, and he would do that multiple times a week. And we know that there are people that can adapt to that as well, because they can recruit higher threshold motor units. They can recover from that. I think the key is that, you know, probably both approaches, if you only did those, are probably not ideal. You probably need to be somewhere in the middle, where yes, you are using volume, and yes, you are using intensity. And that's what we're going to do with Greg. That's how we're going to work it in. And if you're watching this out there and you're thinking, well, what should I do? I would encourage you to maybe start with a little bit more volume-based training. So,
especially if you're a beginner.
If you're a beginner, you know, definitely more volume-based training. And maybe once a week, throw in some strength work where you're lifting, you know, in the rep ranges of 2 to 5 reps. And, you know, you're staying maybe 1 rep shy of failure. And that way you're not taking your sets to failure, and you're getting more acclimated to heavier weight, and see how you respond. And then maybe in 4 to 5 weeks or 6 weeks, you change it up. And what you do is maybe do the exact opposite, where you have 2 days where you're lifting and doing strength work, and then 1 day where you're doing more volume-based, where you're lifting in the 8 to 15 rep range, and you're staying 2 reps shy of failure, and see which training program you progress better with. And then from there, you'll have an idea of what works best for you. But I do still think that you should work both in your program.
So everybody, like I've said before, there's not necessarily a black and white approach to how this stuff works. And the reason being is everybody's different. Mentally we're different, physically we're different. What we respond to is different too in terms of stressors in life. So, you know, whether you want to do your bro split where you're doing 1 body part a day, whether you want to do a push-pull legs, whether you want to do a 5-3-1, a 5x5, a DUP, you know, like a linear versus a non-linear or a daily undulating type of periodization, it's really coming down to what your body adapts to best. So for instance, when John first met me, I was typical, well, besides I never did legs. You know, I had that, I was like the brofessor. Like Dom. I never did legs. I always found the way not to do legs. Have you ever seen that video, which is hysterical?
Yeah.
But I used to do a body part a day. I had my arm day, my shoulder day, my chest day, my back day, and repeat, because I never did legs. Or my chest day. Those type of things, and it worked for me. I got a lot of results out of just doing, and became incredibly strong just doing those. Then John introduced, you know, hitting a body part more than once a week without doing necessarily all that volume in one day, spreading it across, which enabled me to recover a little bit quicker. And my physique has evolved drastically in the past 2 years. Anybody that's seen me from Kent to anybody at Pure Focus to Retro to John to my wife have said, you look completely different from 2 years ago. Now, that happened to work very great for me, but you also got to remember, John and I'm very hands-on with how John, you know, John gives me a program, but we talk a lot as to how my planning is going to occur, because there are certain things that he looks at studies for and says, well, I think this, and I say, great, but I don't agree with it, and here's the reason why I don't agree with it, and I would prefer this. And it's a good compromise between the two of us. Where I can mentally execute the program, and I feel like I'm getting full benefit from it. And John's also keeping me regulated in a sense where I'm not blowing myself out, having my arms falling off by the end of the workout to make sure that it works. So this all comes down to being a student of the game, taking a protocol, whatever one it is, whether it's your bro splits, your push-pull legs, you know, your linears or your non-linear periodization type programs, and executing it for an extended period of time to see how your body responds. And that's the only way you're going to learn. I mean, we can sit there and talk about optimal, but optimal is really a matter of opinion at this point.
And it's a moving target.
And it's a moving target, because you would have to take, you know how large of a human sector you would have to take and put them in the gym with all the perfect conditions to come up with what optimal is. It really doesn't work because of hormones, because of body types, because of
life stress,
everything. So just learn to do your research, create a program for yourself, or find a coach like John or somebody else who's going to write a program for yourself, execute it to its fullest for an extended period of time. Don't base it off of 3 to 4 weeks, because that's not enough time for your body to adjust. And from there, you're going to start to see how your body responds, whether it's you want to be pure strength, or you're not looking to gain that much mass and hypertrophy, or you want to get the hypertrophy effects and the strength at the same time. There's a lot of manipulation with those variables.
Absolutely. I have a little bit more to add to that. So another variable to consider is if you're an athlete in another type of sport. Might have to tilt it back a little bit. There we go. Truck started coming into my lane. So, you know, another variable to consider is if you're a athlete in in a sport like football or, you know, soccer or whatever it is, you also need to work in more ballistic training and power training into that as well. So you have to be thinking about, incorporating those kind of things into, what was that? You have to incorporate those into your training as well. And another thing to think about when I said optimal is a moving target. So what optimal is something that should change for you over time. So if your training program, let's say at this time you're a beginner and you're training maybe 3 days a week full body, right? That might be totally optimal for you right now. And then in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you might need to change that. You might need to then go to upper lower body splits to get more volume in, because now you've adapted. Now you don't have the newbie gains. Gains. Now what's happened is you've adapted to that workload, and now you need more volume. And unless you want to be in the gym for 3 hours, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you might need to split that up. And so my point is that over time, you will need to change what you do, so that way you're challenging your body to adapt to a new stressor, and you're doing it slowly. So that's another thing to consider when you're thinking about programming, is that how can you be an even better version of yourself in a month, 2 months, 3 months, and how can you change what's optimal for you over time?
All right, guys, I hope that clears some things up. I guess we fooled them. They're all pissed off. I guarantee you most people didn't even make it to this part of the video.
I know.
They're like, screw you, man. So you're going to tell us what the perfect workout plan is so I can get big in 2 weeks.
That's because we're going to give you the magic supplement, the magic pill.
Well, we're going to go with that next. But we'll talk to you guys later.